asked us to play in just a bit, free and all right now. What a guitar anthem that is. First, though, even though Trish isn't here, Team Trish is still happening, and putting the world to rights today is Jenny Critchlow. Afternoon.
Afternoon, Ed. How are you?
I am very well. How are you, and where are you? Are you somewhere where you're getting to enjoy the sunshine?
I'm looking out at it as I speak, Ed. I'm in Claverden, which is a village between Warwick and Henley and Arden.
And is it a good view so far? I mean, you can see the sun, but what are you looking at?
I'm looking at grass I should have mown, but we're doing no mow June as well, so that's the excuse.
I think I'm doing just no mow 2023, if I'm honest. You look at my garden.
No mow life.
Yeah, no mow life. That is me, absolutely. Right, let's get into it then. For Team Trish then. So we're talking parenting to start with as well. Self-declared Australian lighthouse parents, Sammy and Jason, they've caused a stir after claiming that they let their 6 and 10-year-old go out on their own after dark. So in this TV interview, Sammy asked the kids to go out to collect a takeaway from down the road. She also talks about how they're allowed to go swimming without parental supervision. Sammy explained apparently they say it's not possible for us to be there all the time, so it's important that we teach them to fend for themselves. We can't focus our attention on each individual kid, which means we have to let the other kids have their own freedom and their own space. Where do you stand on this, Jenny? Is that the right call, do you think?
Oh gosh, I'm always tricky in criticising or supporting anything. I only know that much about them. And I think with parenting, we all do the very best we know how to do with what we have. And I don't think that criticising anyone... Well, the thing is, Ed, is that criticising anything doesn't change anything anyway. So it's looking at what... Even if I thought this was the most wrong thing ever, criticising it isn't going to change it. The only way we change things with people is to meet them exactly where they are and to validate what they're saying and to appreciate what they're saying and then maybe invite a dialogue. So where I stand, I don't know, they're doing their parent. I'm sure you could criticise mine loads. But at the end of the day, we're doing the best we know how to do. Every parent is.
I think you've sat on the fence brilliantly there. Good work, Jenny. Good work.
Thank you. Not my first time.
You've got a couple of kids, which they're a bit older, aren't they? Than 6 and 10 now. Is that right?
Yeah, they're 19 and 16.
So thinking back, and I know it's hard to do because I'm the same. Like thinking back to what my kids were last week is a little bit difficult to think. But when your kids were 6 and 10, do you think that you would have given them that kind of responsibility?
I know when they were 6 and 10, I wouldn't. But what I regret bitterly is parenting from the lowest common denominator, which is fear. And I wish that I'd known what I knew now and could have been a bit more resilient in what I allowed them to do.
What do you mean by that? Because that's interesting that you say that, because I feel like I parent from a place of fear, and I'm always very much like, be careful, don't do that. And I don't want to discourage my kids from doing that, but I do really want to keep them safe. So explain what you mean about what you know now and how you do things differently.
Well, I think like anyone, I've grown as a parent and I've learnt more as I've gone along, and especially from a few people parenting differently. And I think that mainly our parenting decisions, while we say it's keeping safe, actually it's our own fear of loss and our own fear of our own feelings. And we restrict our children from doing things that in my day perhaps they would have been allowed to do. I know for a fact my 78-year-old dad, when he was 6 or 7, he used to get the train into Birmingham, and it wasn't necessarily safer then. The traffic might have been safer, but people weren't. They were just as good and just as bad as they are today. And so looking at my own fear and my own motivation, I would have overridden a lot more and allowed a lot more freedom and a lot more sovereignty for my children.
I think my kids are just getting to the age now where I feel like I should give them a bit more responsibility. Perhaps not the kind of responsibility that these 6 and 10-year-olds have got, because they are considerably older, but I've got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I kind of want to be them to be a little bit more self-managing. But it is tough to let go even a little bit, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, my goodness, that's the hard bit about being a parent. Don't you think, Ed, that kids are like someone taking your heart out your chest and giving it legs and no sense and letting it run around on its own? It's just like, it's the most painful thing ever. But I see our job as parents as our job is to look round corners for them and facilitate where they want to go, as opposed to this is how you should be so I feel okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a brilliant way of putting it. That's exactly how I feel about my children completely.
Yeah. Oh, I feel for you. It's so hard.
It is really hard. And, like you say, you just try and do the best you can. But it is difficult when you hear stories like this. And no doubt, if my kids heard this story, they'd be like, well, why can't we do that? And as you said, you can't really ever criticise somebody else's parenting because they do what's right for them. But it is difficult when your own children see other people doing things and you're like, well, what about us?
It's also listening to their question. They asked a valid question. Why can't we do that? And that's the moment as a parent to go in and going, well, why can't they do that? Well, the answer is I'm fearful, as opposed to I'm facilitating. It's always going back to that proper question, as opposed to just blanket answering, well, you can't.
Surely you just go back to what my parents used to tell me because I told you so. Is that not how it works?
No, you can do that if you like. You have to look at the results. It's like...
Exactly. Look at the results. I am the product of those results, and that's not where we want to be. Absolutely not. Right, stay there for me, Jenny. We'll move. Bless you. We shall move on to our next topic, which is a little bit morbid, I'll grant you, after Freya Ridings and Castles. It's just after 2:30. Castles, BBC CWR. Hello, it's Ed in for Trish today. 26 minutes to 3 now. So Team Trish today is Jenny Critchlow. Jenny looking out the window and seeing the sunshine. But how many barbecues have you got planned this weekend?
I'm on a hen weekend. I'm 47 and on a hen weekend on Saturday. So we're in London, no barbecues. I know.
How crazy a hen weekend do you think it's going to be?
Well, crazier than I thought, Ed, because I thought we were going to a magic show. And I was telling my husband about it, and he said, that's weird. And he said, what is it? And I said, it's called Magic Mike. And apparently Magic Mike isn't a magic show at all. And I didn't know.
That's incredible.
So I'm not going to do that bit. I'm a bit old for that. But we're doing dinner and piano bar, so it'll be lovely.
Have you Googled Magic Mike just to see what it's all about?
Well, he showed me pictures, and I went, okay. I thought it was like Darren Brown or something. But it's like and I've been really keen. It's like Jenny's keen to go to Magic Mike. It's like, I thought you were going to make someone disappear and saw me in half.
Just like Paul Daniels. Yeah, that would be incredible.
Absolutely, yeah.
I love the idea that if you hadn't have found out, just rocking up and then suddenly the Magic Mike experience happens and you're like, hang on, this is not what I thought I was buying into.
Yeah, I just would have had a lot of gin.
It's the only way. Drink through it. Right, so this is slightly morbid, our next topic on Team Trish. Following the death of a close friend, a lady called Anne-Marie decided she wanted to show her mum just how much she was loved while she was still alive, so she put a funeral on for her. Now, Anne-Marie held the ceremony in her back garden following the roots of her Swedish and Danish descent, which, I mean, we often say that at funerals. Wouldn't it be lovely if the person was here and they could hear all the wonderful things that people are saying about them? Do you think Anne-Marie's got a point? Should we celebrate each other a little bit more?
Well, I think if we take the word funeral out and we didn't say to our friends or something, come to your own funeral, then it actually is a really, really good idea. And there is a really good book called Tuesdays with Maury by a man called Mitch Olban. And he visits Maury every month or so. He's dying of motor neuron disease and throws his funeral for him while he's alive. But I think it's that, look, no, I don't know whether you know anyone, Ed, that feels enough or feels heard enough or valued enough. And I know it's a cliche, but comparison is the thief of joy. And we spend our lives comparing our insides with everybody's outside facade and come at wanting. So very few people on the planet, I think, are feeling great about themselves. And we make ourselves feel better by making ourselves feel better than. So we criticise other people, we criticise their parenting, like we were talking about last time, or we decide that what they're doing is wrong, and we think that makes us feel better. But it doesn't fill us up at all. It just makes them worse. So imagine if we all started celebrating each other instead, giving compliments, showing our gratitude, throwing a non-funeral funeral, and then we would fill each other up and be very clear and real about who we were and meet each other where we were. And then there would be less comparison, fewer empty stomachs and souls, and much more of filled, authentic people allowing each other to parent or do whatever it is they wanted to do.
Wouldn't that be a lovely thing? I feel like we almost got to that place off the back of the pandemic. I feel like there was a kind of, look, we're still here. Isn't it amazing? We've made it through a terrible time. And seeing people again, it felt like for a little while at least, we were appreciating people a bit more. Although we've kind of moved away and gone back into the groove, haven't we now, maybe?
Well, that's because it's novelty. So novelty we love. Well, that's why we want a new car. We love novelty. Finally, we're out and about being great to each other. It's whether anything truly changed consciously inside around how we feel better about ourselves, which is not comparing, filling ourselves up with our own positive dialogue and allowing everyone else to live their lives.
I guess really if you're doing something like this, like a celebration party for a person, rather than calling it a funeral, you'd have to set some rules, wouldn't you? And go, look, this is what we're going to be doing. We're only thinking positivity and love, because otherwise, who knows what they might say.
Yes, I think it would have to be that. And also that the person you threw it for didn't think that you were doing it because you knew something they didn't, like they hadn't got long, but no one had told them. So again, like, it's filled with flaws, but I get the idea and the sentiment is that should we be more positive about each other, more positive about ourselves? Absolutely. But I think it's a growth, is that's coming, but we're coming to it slowly.
You make a very good point, Jenny, because suddenly going, surprise, welcome to your funeral, might not be the moment that you were hoping for.
Even if you don't say funeral, it'll be, we're just all celebrating you. And you're like, why? Well, I don't know. We just thought we'd celebrate you. Yeah, but why? Don't know. You think, oh, dear, I'm going to fall over dead tomorrow. So just, you can't do it to someone.
Yes, so a bit of warning if we are doing that is definitely the way to go. Okay, we're kind of almost back to parenting for our next one, which we'll tackle after Free and All Right Now. Air guitar anthem, this, isn't it? BBC CWR. The air guitar at a certain moment. Free and All Right Now, BBC CWR. Hello, it's Ed in for Trish, and it's Team Trish happening right now with Jenny Critchlow. We've already talked parenting and about judging other people's parenting choices. You can't do that, really, can you? Celebrating each other and going to your own funeral, so at least you get to hear the nice things that people say about you before you're not here. I know it feels a little bit morbid, doesn't it? We're kind of back to parenting now. A town in Ireland has been hitting the headlines after signing a pact to say that no child will have a mobile phone before secondary school. Do you agree with this? Could you cope with a phone ban? Jenny, how sort of linked to your phone do you think you are?
I'm pretty linked. I want to be a bit better than that and say not too linked, but no, I am linked. I have spent periods of time with it off, though. I think the maximum was 7 days.
That's good.
But everybody who knew me knew I was where I was and the phone was off. The hardest bit, actually, was remembering to set a clock alarm so that I knew what time I was going to get up in the morning, because obviously it's just normally it's set for me on a regular basis. But I can cope without a phone, absolutely. And actually, I coped for about 24 years without a phone because I grew up before the internet.
Yeah.
So we had like really creative things around communication. So I grew up in the countryside, and on a Saturday when I wanted to meet my friends in Birmingham, I was off. There often wasn't a lift, or I was late. So I knew the phone number by heart of the payphone in Pavilions, and my friends would meet there. And if I wasn't there, I would phone that payphone. They would answer, and I'd say, "Haven't left yet," and they'd go off and come back half an hour later, and I'd phone it again. You just found ways around it.
So true, isn't it?
That was quite cool.
I cannot remember any phone numbers now. Weirdly enough, though, I can, from about the age of 6, remember the number of the phone where I grew up, the landline, because you'd have to answer the phone by saying, hello, 50656, which we don't do now, do we?
Yes. No, not at all. I do know some numbers. In fact, I don't know my kids, which is quite shameful.
I don't know my wife's phone number either. So, phone ban.
You're in trouble.
I am in trouble. I keep trying to learn it, and she always catches me out going, "Oh, I see, next of kin. Go on, write my phone number." I can't do it. It's going to be a problem. Now,
tattoos, Ed. You need a tattoo.
That's where we are. What if she then changed her phone number? I'm lumbered with this phone number that has nothing to do with her anymore. That would be a nightmare. So let's talk kids and mobile phones then. I'm still, and my wife and I have already had discussions about what age our children would be allowed mobile phones. You've no doubt gone through this with your kids being a bit older. How did you navigate that?
Well, they're older, and technology moved very fast. So we really didn't have, when my 19-year-old was, say, 11, we didn't have the social media or the teenage social media that I think you guys are going to have to deal with. I think that it's going on the individual child. I think that senior school tends to be most people's watershed, because that's when they start maybe getting the train to school or walking to school or the bus to school. But the problem with each individual child is that they go to school and every other individual child has individual parents making individual decisions, which then becomes the kind of peer pressure. I think that this town in Ireland, good for them, they sound very cooperative. I think they're trying to avoid this kind of peer pressure that most. I don't know what age they've agreed, but I presume it's at least before secondary school. I think it is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you can't. I mean, I think that's probably where we are as parents at the moment. My wife and I, that we're kind of going. Well, secondary school, our kids will then walk themselves to school, and there will be that thing of going, where are they? How are they? Are they definitely safe? What if they don't come home straight from school? At least they can let us know what they're up to. But it is so difficult, isn't it? And I think as a parent, like you say, there's the social media aspect and going, well, I don't want to snoop too much into their lives, but I want to make, again, we're going back to I want to make sure that they're safe.
Yeah, again, it's going back to our own fears and of letting our children go and keeping tags on them and stuff. And I think the problem is that they don't build any sort of resilient muscle. There's very little risk taking. We allow very little risk. And even when we allow risk, we can track them through that risk. We can only watch and see what happens in the future. And we're the older generation, so I'm sure I'll criticise it and say in my day it was better. But, we're just going to, but that's going to happen, is it? Once I'm a grandma, I'll go, oh, in my day it was different. But it won't be. They'll evolve, and they're internet ready. They'll be brought up by a generation now in their 30s that grew up with the internet. They know what they're doing more than we do. So it's just sort of going, rather than fear-based parenting, fear-based decisions, more what works, what can we do sensibly, and how can we be responsible for our own fears and worries that doesn't then clip the wings of the younger generation.
I have to say, you're very wise, Jenny. What does it remind me you do for a living?
Cheers.
Tell me.
I teach workshops and courses in things like this, questioning our dialogue. I teach a lot of meditation and shamanic work, but really it's about questioning all our stories and beliefs inside that create so much turmoil, and looking at really what's true and what is true. Actually, I'm fearful, and until I know my child is definitely safe, I'm going to feel fearful, and that's just a thought that creates the fear. It's things like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
asking those questions makes a lot of sense. Now, final thing, I've got to know, if you're not going to Magic Mike now, you know that it's not a magic show.
No.
What are you going to be doing while the rest of the hens are there?
Well, we're going down anyway and having lunch and things like that. I think it's only an hour and a half. I think I'll sort of sit and have a shower. I don't know. I'll sit and have some champagne in the sun, I suppose. But yeah, no, not going to the magic show.
Are you sure that you won't get dragged in last minute? Suddenly go on then.
It'd take a lot of champagne. And that, if anyone's listening, that was not me laying down the line and you saying, let's take loads of champagne. It was just it was such a shock.
I still love that you thought it was a magic show. It's just such a great
I thought
thing.
It was like Darren Brown, yeah. And the fact that my husband knew what it was. It's like, how do you know what that is? But it turns out everyone knows. But
I think, everybody does know. I mean, it's a little bit like Darren Brown. It is an element of mind control, and I think people are under a certain spell when they see Magic Mike. So, yeah, okay, Darren Brown, kind of. But then
Well, you go and tell me, Ed. Let me know.
Okay, maybe I will. Yeah, if you've got that ticket still, I'll go along.
Awesome.
Jenny, have a brilliant weekend. Thank you so much for joining me on Team Trish. Pleasure speaking to you.
Thanks for having me, Ed. Cheers.
It's BBC CWR with Tom Grennan to play next. CWR